What's up, guys? It's Jake. We're back. Obviously, from the intro, there's been a little bit of a change. We're no longer Shepherd Tactical Coaching. We've kind of rebranded to Shepherd Performance Coaching. Nothing that we're really talking about is useful in a tactical sense. We're not training how to shoot guns, use weapons, any of that kind of stuff. So I felt it was more fitting to move towards what I'm actually passionate about, which is performance as a whole. With that, also in the next couple of weeks, I'll be finishing up my personal training certificate in order to be a certified personal trainer. So I'll be able to start offering some fitness coaching as well. So more to follow on that. But anyways, back to the original topic for today, which is the transition that nobody wants to talk about. I did not want to particularly record this episode just because it brings a pretty low part of my life back into the frame. But I think it's necessary, and hopefully others can kind of learn from some of the experiences that I went through and be able to apply them to their lives as well. So we'll talk about it. In 2022, I was informed early that year in January that I would be undergoing a med board. What this is, for people who don't know what a med board is, it is when the military evaluates you based off of a medical diagnosis, whether or not you're able to continue service, number one, in your job that you currently have, and then number two, as a soldier overall. So I had gotten a diagnosis from my psychologist that I've been working with for close to 3 years at this point, and we were starting to explore medication to treat that and other things. And as a result of that, I was no longer able to fly helicopters. I was no longer qualified for a flight physical. So we had to, evaluate, was I fit to stay in the Army? I was a pretty big mess at this point. I was, falling apart on the inside and just trying to keep it together. And slowly that internal struggle started shifting outwards, and it left its mark in several different areas. So I started the med board, right? Ended up finishing that in, I think, June of that same year, and was informed that I would indeed be medically retired, meaning I get the benefits of doing the 20 years just at an earlier point. So they froze my rank, at a CW2 and effectively retired me. The official diagnosis of why I was medically retired was due to major depressive disorder, general anxiety disorder, and then later on PTSD was also added to that diagnosis following some VA treatments and appointments and all that good stuff. So I started gearing up, right? June, everything kind of finalized, and they were like, this is what's going to happen. I didn't have a game plan. I had been kind of thinking about what I wanted to do, but honestly, I didn't have a clue at the end of the day. So I got ready to make the transition. In the meantime, my child had been moved back kind of close to where his mom and my families lived, so she had transitioned back up that way, just getting ready for the transition, and we were no longer together. So I made the choice to list the house and move back home in with my parents in order to just be as close to him as I could be as present as I was allowed to be, and set myself up in order to be a bigger part of his life as he grew up, which has been going pretty well thus far. Was August when I hit terminal leave. So it was pretty quick. From June to August, I kind of had to set everything in motion. The house was listed, got, some things going. I think it was under contract by the beginning of August. So, good things happening. I had secured a job, which was driving school buses of all things. back home for when I moved back, so I'd be able to, do something that allowed some flexibility, be able to get some VA appointments taken care of and all that as I completed that transition. And then it also would give me time to really figure out what step was next. So I moved back home, and day one, didn't realize just how difficult it would be. I didn't start the job immediately. I had some time off before they were going to start my training as a bus driver, and then even then, I had no structure. I had no day-to-day routine of this is what I'm going to do. I just had, everything kind of wide open. The only consistent thing was my visitation schedule with my son, and that was limited at the time. So really, I want to talk about the biggest thing that I think nobody that's gone through the transition acknowledges. You get a lot of information from people in the military when you're going to a new duty station, when you're going to take a course, right? We talk to each other, we let each other know, hey, this is kind of what to expect, blah 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 blah. We get that intel ahead of time, but there was really no intel going into this. I didn't understand the profound impact that losing my identity as a Black Hawk pilot, as a soldier, as a chief warrant officer, all that just completely being wiped out, what that would actually do to me. I felt completely and totally lost. I was, okay driving a bus, it was fine, but that's not who I wanted to be or what I wanted to be known as, right? So there was no set goal of this is what I need to be transitioning out. And I mean, it hurt me in the long run, right? Short term definitely cost me some things, but long run is really, I missed out on a good 18 months that I could have been preparing and building and growing. And instead, I was just kind of floundering because I didn't understand what was going on in my own head. But, as a man, to have those things that you worked so hard for stripped away from you, I mean, it was demoralizing. I got pretty, involved with drinking. Not really, proud of it, but I mean, it was pretty low period in my life, and I drank a lot of that away just to not feel anything and to just distract myself from it. And with that came more problems, right? Hangovers, just not feeling good, laziness, no productivity, doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, had no business doing, and it cost me time. It cost me time that I really shouldn't have lost. I should have been growing and building. But then I started driving a bus, and I started kind of getting into somewhat of a routine. I know I didn't want to drive a bus forever, but it was a good point for me to be able to sit back and reevaluate some, things that were going on. So, it put me on a schedule, which was important. I had to be up and out of the house by 5:30, and then en route and picking kids up and dropping them off all at set times. So that was a positive for me. And then from that, I was able to identify, well, like, I don't feel healthy. I was not eating good. I was not doing any kind of exercise. I was stationary for, the majority of the day. At the time, I was driving Uber in between my bus routes, my morning and my afternoon route, just to, put a extra cash in the pocket for the, legal fees that I had going on for the divorce and all this other stuff, just trying to get better. So started going to the gym, and I mean, big improvement just in a month, just in my mood, my attitude, all that kind of stuff. But I was still identifying as though I was active duty. I was still holding myself to the same kind of mindset, and instead I should have been adapting to a new mindset. I was in a new environment, a new culture. Everything was just completely different than what I was used to, and I was like, oh, it's not going to be that big of a deal, until I was actually there, and it was a huge deal. Just the anxiety, day to day, not knowing what's going on, not really having a direction, not a path. I mean, it was lonely, to be honest. I mean, I hadn't set up a friend group. My family was back in Savannah with my unit. Like, those were the guys that I spent almost all my time with. So going from that to really not having a quote tribe, a group of buddies, all you're doing is living in a group chat. It took some getting used to, and it really, it put me in a depression. It was tough, but from there, I kind of bounced around, did an odd job working for a guy that I ended up getting screwed over on, and I finally decided, I was like, look, I can't continue just kind of bouncing around and not really having a direction. I was like, I've got these benefits with school. Let's pick something and let's start fresh. So I ended up going back to college, came to the local technical college here, applied, easily got in and started my path to becoming an electrician. So I had kind of identified I wanted to do, wanted a skill. If I was going to go to school, I wanted something that I'd be able to fall back on, if I ended up taking a different direction and moving towards that. So school was the first step. Once I got into school, things were a lot better. I was on a much better routine. Made myself take the 8 a.m. classes. It sucked a lot of days. I was, not happy about getting up and going, but it got me in that routine. I had to be disciplined. I had to, have assignments turned in at certain times. It put me back in that mode to be able to kind of fight my way out of depression. And over time, things got better. I was much more productive. Finances got, somewhat in order and was able to make significant progress with that. Over time, I was able to spend more time with my son and continue to develop our relationship and grow that. I was in a relationship for a period of time, and eventually that kind of, took its toll as well for some other reasons. Just wasn't a good match. But, I was able to start functioning as a contributing member of society. I was still doing Uber on the side while I was in school. The GI Bill only covered, a small portion of the bills. So in order to continue growing, I did Uber on the side and was able to, support myself and my son and continue to move us forward. From that, having that experience, I was then able to acquire, the day job that kind of set me up to move on and move up with the manufacturing company that I was working for. And, it really, that step of going back into school, that first step of you have to be somewhere at a certain time, really set the tone for getting my act together. Beyond that, we'll talk in the next episode a little bit more about some of the behind the scenes stuff, but really just committing to a plan, setting a plan of action and committing to it. And then once you're committed to it, continuing to refine that plan and keep going, set those daily discipline reminders and grow. And that's how you can pull yourself out of a depression. I mean, obviously, medication played a part as well. However, at the end of the day, a medication is not going to be responsible for moving you to the next level. A therapist is not going to be responsible for that. You have to want to do the things in order to grow. You have to want to have the discipline that it's going to take to get to that next level. It's you at the end of the day. Nobody else, just you. So then we go and we look at my, weight loss. Currently, I'm at 45 pounds as of a couple of days ago. I hit 205 pounds, down from 250 pounds last fall in October of 25. The proof is in the pudding as far as discipline goes. I get up every morning and I'm either going to the gym or doing some cardio on like a rest day to make sure I'm staying active. The pounds are continuing to come off. The meals, I sat here with my girlfriend today and we meal prepped for about 4 hours just to make sure that we have good whole food, to eat throughout the week. So taking that day-to-day discipline and really, really copy and pasting it to multiple areas of life, whether it be, a day job, whether it be a relationship, whether it be your nutrition, your fitness, it applies to all of that. You just have to apply those tactics a little differently. So Not as much content this week. This episode really was just to tell the nitty gritty, the bulk of the transition. Um, the biggest advice that I would give anybody that's about to go down their own transition, or is in the middle of a transition, or knows that a transition is coming in the next few years, is really to set a routine. Set goals for yourselves and set a routine in order to accomplish those goals. And it doesn't have to be this great, huge goal. It just needs to be a SMART goal, a specific, measurable, attainable goal that you can, easily get a win on, and it still advance you towards the direction that you want to go. For any military personnel that are going to be transitioning, staying fit. You don't have to go out and do a 10-mile ruck march. It doesn't have to be that extreme, but doing some level of physical activity in order to keep your mind going, keep your body going. We're designed to move as a species. The human being is designed to move. So continuing to do that, and then if you're, the biggest shock to me for the civilian world was the fact that civilians don't drink as much as the military does. The military makes it a very normalized cultural thing to go out and consume large amounts of alcohol and then turn around and be a functioning member of society the next day. However, in the civilian world, that's really not the case. There's some people that do it, but it's nowhere near the level that it is in the military. And when I kind of put down the bottle for a while and got sober for a year and pushed myself to do that, it really opened my eyes to the self-destructive behaviors that I was exhibiting, and that contributed to everything overall. So those are the biggest takeaways from the transition: is to have a plan, stick to the plan, and take care of yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. You may have a wife, you may have kids. They're not going to do it for you. It's all up to you at the end of the day as to how you take care of yourself and the condition that your body and your mind are in. Right? So doing little things in order to make sure that you're being the best version of yourself adds up in the long run. And on days when you don't feel like getting out of bed, days that you're just struggling through it and you're having a really tough time, take 3 things, 3 tasks. Even if it's basic, I'm going to take a shower, I'm going to brush my teeth morning and night, and I'm going to read 5 pages of a book. Whatever those tasks are, however, meaningless they seem in that moment, setting daily tasks sets you up to be successful. There's that age-old saying about, get out of the bed and then make your bed first thing in the morning, and boom, you've already accomplished something and nobody can take away from you. I mean, it's true. It's true. Doing daily things that advance you towards whatever goal that you have, not only does it add up over time, but then you're winning those days. Nobody can tell you that you failed that day because you did what you had to do in order to accomplish that list. Part of the command and control program, is having a daily list of things to do. It's a 5-item list, and depending on how far along you are in the program, what tier you're at, determines what kind of level those tasks are. In the beginning, it's very simple. Those tasks are laid out for you step by step, and you're expected to be able to follow them. It's simple stuff: drinking enough water during the day, 30 minutes of exercise per day. You don't have to have vigorous exercise. It can be just a walk down the street. But daily little things that show that you are able to give yourself discipline in order to move to that next level, the next tier. Now you're setting goals along with your coach, and those daily tasks that you have advance you towards that goal as a whole. And then tier 3, the command tier, it's really you working hand in hand with that coach, saying, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it, do you have any feedback? Okay, now I'm going to execute, right? So that's really how things kind of advance through the program, and how ultimately in the end you're able to take command of your life without a coach, without anybody else. You're able to make those decisions and execute on the discipline day in and day out in order to get there. So wrapping it up, transitions are tough, but having a plan is tougher. Okay, so make that plan, stick to that plan, make sure that you execute the daily discipline required in order to get there, and then, overall just sticking to it. Believing in yourself and not listening to anybody else. That transition's tough. Not a lot of people talk about it, but if you handle it the right way, you'll set yourself up for a lifetime of success. That's all I got for you this week. We'll see you in 2 weeks for episode 5, where we're going to talk a little bit more about what identity I had to put on when I finally got through the transition, and what kept me going and those motivating factors that made me want to be better. So until then, stay safe out there. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next in 2 weeks.
This is how legends are made.